What does it take to crash a stock market? A global pandemic? A housing crisis? Well, what if I told you that 200 years ago, the entire British economy was brought to its knees by the sound of a single stolen bell? That's right. This is the incredible true story of how one defiant bell in a northern port sent shockwaves to London's Exchange Alley, shattering the calm of Britain's money men. And here's the kicker. The stakes were sky high. Britain was hanging by a thread. The infamous War of Jenkins' Ear was choking crucial Atlantic trade routes. Coffers were collapsing under war debt, and famine was spreading fast. Without a shock to the system, the ghost of the South Sea swindle could have returned to bankrupt an empire. The year is 1740, and for the people of Britain, it's a perfect storm of misery. The country is still haunted by the devastating collapse of the South Sea bubble, a crash that had wiped out fortunes just 2 decades earlier. Now, on top of the costly war with Spain, months of heavy rain have ruined the harvests, doubling grain prices. In the northern port of Newcastle, people are starving, and they're watching as the grain they desperately need is loaded onto ships to be sold for a massive profit somewhere else. And in the middle of all this is Captain Jane Bogey. She may not have been a real captain, but a fishwife tough as nails. She had earned the respect of everyone in the port. Seeing the injustice and hunger, she refused to stand idle. So she came up with a plan, one that was born out of desperation, and it was brutally simple. Ring the town's alarm bell, rally the people to raid the grain warehouses, and ultimately sink South Sea shares. She knew the risk. But in a city this tense, a single bell could be a final plea to wake everyone up from this nightmare. Or it could be an explosion that spits them into bankruptcy. And right there and then, it was risk worth taking. At first, it was Jane's bell that kicked Newcastle's women into action. Together, they blocked grain exports intended for wealthy merchants, demanding fair prices. City officials hesitated. Profits over ethics was a tough choice to make. But Mayor Sir Cuthbert Fenwick didn't give up. Although he tried negotiation, but the sheriff, Matthew White Ridley, only saw rebellion. Tension grew, and the sound of that bell travelled far and wide. It reached the ears of miners from the nearby Heaton colliery, men with starving families and nothing left to lose. Driven by something raw and urgent, survival, their protest became a tide of rage, marching towards the city centre. Waiting for them was Sheriff Ridley and his private militia. Their muskets were loaded. Blood was all he knew. But they were ready to die. As the crowd of hungry, angry miners faced the armed guards, the entire city held its breath. And then, a single shot from Ridley's militia rings out. Chaos erupts. But this isn't a mob looking to steal. This is an uprising born of defiance. The crowd charges the Guildhall, the heart of the city's power, breaking the militia's muskets and throwing them into the river. They weren't there for riches. They were there to be heard. And out comes a single shot that echoed all the way to London. Anger explodes as the crowd charges the Guildhall, the centre of Newcastle's authority. Had Ridley's bullet triggered an unstoppable uprising? The news hits Exchange Alley like a cannonball. A riot? In a key port? Investors panic. The ghost of the South Sea bubble was all they could see. They start selling. Stocks begin to tumble. In the halls of Parliament, Prime Minister Robert Walpole, the architect of Britain's economic recovery, frantically seeks to reassure Parliament and stop the freefall. But the stolen bell of Newcastle rang on, threatening to bring his entire system crashing down. Will Walpole's reputation and Britain's economy survive the echoes of Newcastle's stolen bell? June 1740. Newcastle streets. Back in Newcastle, troops finally restore a fragile order. But the authorities were shaken by the intensity of public anger. They had a choice: crush the protesters and risk a full-blown civil war, or listen. So, they listened. Most of the protesters were released without severe punishment. No one dared risk another spark. Soon, new laws were passed to restrict grain exports and provide relief for the poor. Months later, Walpole fiercely defended his legacy, recalling his role in restoring confidence after the 1720 disaster. Yet behind his defiant words lurks a truth he cannot escape. Financial stability depends entirely on public trust and social fairness. The riots taught Britain that ignoring the struggles of ordinary people risks economic catastrophe. Grain export restrictions and relief measures soon follow. But deeper questions remain. Today, Newcastle's stolen bell still echoes faintly, warning us that economic stability isn't built merely on profit, but justice. Every crisis we face reminds us greed must never again silence the bell of fairness. What happens if today's markets once again hear that stolen bell? Are we ready to listen? If you like this video, consider subscribing for more. It helps us keep ringing the bell for stories like these, ones that deserve to be heard. Thanks for watching.